Hey guys, welcome back to Motophonic. Today we're going to do a bit of an on-trail test, I guess, between the KTM XCW 300 two-stroke and a KTM 350 XCF four-stroke. I've owned both of these bikes. This particular bike that you're seeing here in the poor riding pose, thanks to yours truly. Get off your ass, man. Is a 2012 300 XCW. This by far has to have been my favorite bike. And I probably would have kept it had I not been racing at high altitude and had to go through the pain of jetting carbs on a regular basis. This is one of the downfalls of owning a two-stroke. It does require a bit more hands-on when you start getting into the higher altitudes, and you start, and not even really the higher altitudes, just going between altitudes. So leaning the mixture, richening the mixture, depending on what your needs are from a performance curve perspective. And generally speaking, the bike still performs. It just doesn't perform as well, obviously, when you start having mixture issues at altitude. I think the biggest things for me for this two-stroke, in terms of why I liked it so much more than the four-stroke, was the weight. It's probably a good, I'd say 20 or 30 pounds lighter than the four-stroke, and this is with full fluids. So part of that is due in part to the fact that the tank is quite a bit smaller than the four-stroke, and obviously this one doesn't have as much in terms of hardware, right? Four-strokes are a much more hardware-intensive engine. They have a whole lot more going on. Two-strokes a much simpler construction and therefore much lighter. They're also a lot temperature-wise. They're much cooler. They run much cooler than a four-stroke, or at least that's my impression. The time that I was on the two-stroke during a race, and this isn't a race, they were just doing some single-track riding here. And again, this is before I actually understood the fact that standing up is actually a good thing. So enough about my crappy riding position. Both of these bikes have excellent braking capability, as you can see being demonstrated here. They both have great front rotors. Front calipers are excellent. The suspension on these two bikes differ. The 300 that I'm riding here does not have linkage in the rear. The XCFW, or the XCF on the 350 XCF that you'll see later, does. And I'll be explaining some of the differences there when I show some more coverage of the 350. This 300 is light. It's cool. The suspension's great for these single track, these gnarly single track trails, and it also holds the corner really well. You can be flying through corners and bend it over pretty good, and as long as you're not on a bunch of pea gravel that kicks out your wheels, it holds the line pretty well. So enough about 300, and I'll be doing more of a head-to-head comparison a little bit later as well, but let's get on with the 350. Okay, something that you'll notice right away is the sound. Duh. Four-strokes put out a much throatier sound. Deep down rumble, if you will. So right off the bat, I have to tell you guys, this is kind of an unfair comparison, because this 350 has undergone some pretty serious mods. Apart from all the hardware, which is pretty much the same on both the 300 that you saw and now this 350, being the bark busters, the bash plate, the rad guards, and it's probably the shark fin for the rear disc. All of that hardware is pretty much the same on both of these bikes, so they both have the same treatment as far as protection goes. A couple of things that this bike has that the other bike does not have, apart from the extra 2 strokes, is the Recluse. It's basically an auto clutch that allows you to essentially come to an idle without pulling in the clutch lever. So when you're dealing with really, really gnarly single track and you're on an uphill and you're trying to get over roots and rocks, this bike, this XCF, unless you're on the gas in a big way and you're not sitting on your ass, it's nearly impossible to manage effectively. So the Recluse, and when I say that, these bikes are prone to stall. Okay, they have a very tall first gear, they have a relatively tall second gear, and the fuel injection doesn't play nice with the gearing. So what happens is you'll have flameouts, you'll stall, and usually in the worst, places. I love the fact that this engine produces an enormous amount of power. This 350 is kind of like a in-between engine between the 250 and the 450. And it's about the same weight as the 250 engine. So it produces a tremendous amount of power for the power to weight ratio. Harnessing that power is difficult without some help, and that's what the Recluse does. So it actually allows you to harness the power and leverage that tall gearing and the engine gearing to get the best of both worlds, which is why I really love the combination of the XCF, not the XCFW, and a Recluse. Now, I know guys that run a Recluse on an XCFW as well, and it works well for them, but I really like the tall gearing and the Recluse combined. It really allows you to get up and go off the line, which is why I've been doing well off the line. I'm not a fantastic rider, as you can see. I'm okay, but this engine combined with the gearing and the Recluse is really what's doing it for me. Okay, so when we were talking about the 300, we mentioned a bunch of things that made that bike so great, which one was the weight. You can really notice the weight on this bike. Now, it does have a lot of power. So if you know how to harness that power and you have a Recluse on like we do in these shots, it's far easier to manage, and it becomes more effective in terms of your riding as well. The 300, you really don't need a Recluse for that bike. You can bang gears without even using the clutch, power shifting, but these 4-strokes aren't, they don't behave that way. When you start banging gears on a 4-stroke, it doesn't go well. So the Recluse on these racing bikes, because that's really what the XCF is, it's a race-ready, off-road machine, minus the protection, bark busters, and rat guards, etc. So you really do need that extra help when you're doing this tight stuff. Now, on the open stuff, on the wide open stuff, and more of the US hair scrambles, show much more of the wide open riding styles. That's where this bike really shines. And I'm pretty sure that most guys that are running 350s and the AMA hair scrambles are pretty much all of them are running Recluses. You still get that wide open gearing and that straight ahead power, but you can manage it in the tight stuff with a Recluse. So to me, it's kind of like the best of both worlds. Okay, back to the point I was making before. So these things are heavier, and yes, we can manage it a little better, but they still are heavier, no question about it. they produce a crap load of heat. The heat that they produce is a bit insane. I wasn't ready for it. When I moved from the 2-strokes to this 4-stroke, the amount of heat that was coming up off that engine really took me off guard. The first race I did with this bike nearly put me out of the race. I was overwhelmed with heat. Now, granted, we had 100-degree weather that day. So, you know, some of you guys down south are like, well, whatever, 100 degrees, no biggie. But for us, up in Canada, that's, you know, that weather isn't, you know, super common. In the summer, it gets pretty warm. And don't get me wrong. In the interior and even, you know, in the Hope area, you know, going east, it gets, you know, relatively warm. And 100-degree days aren't that uncommon. But my point is, on this bike, on a 100-degree day, and you're on a 3-hour closed course single track race, much like what we're riding right now, it is insane. I thought I was going to boil from the inside out. So yeah, the difference in heat from the 2-stroke to this 4-stroke was significant, to the point where I actually had to go get a wet vest. And for those of you who don't know what wet vests are, and you're having troubles with heat in the summer, go check it out. They're pretty awesome. It's like a big, you know, it's like a vest that's made out of, I don't know, diaper or tampon material inside the lining of the vest. So it retains the cool water and it keeps your core cool. So it's a lifesaver, especially on this thing. Okay, so the suspension on this bike is significantly different than the 300 XCW. The 300 XCW does not have linkage. This does, and you really notice it when you're at speed, blasting, when you're passing guys on 2-strokes, because you will dust 2-strokes on this bike like they're standing still. And at speed, when you're taking the bumps, you don't have to worry about it. You just, you know, pretend you're on a motocross bike hitting the whoops, and you'll dance across those bumps, no problem. The front fork is, I think it's a dual cartridge or a single cartridge fork, I can't remember, but it's basically a leg up on the same year 2-stroke fork. So this bike is made more for, you know, like a hybrid of motocross and off-road and cross-country racing. And I really like that, but that does mean, and they're heavier bikes, as we've touched on before. So, bottom line is this. Which one would I go with today if I had an opportunity to do it all over again, having ridden the 300 for a couple of years, or, you know, probably 3-4 years, having ridden the 350 now for 3 years, which way would I go? That's a tough question. To be honest, I'd probably stick with the 300. It's lighter, it's cooler. It does have that low-end grunt without the need of a Recluse, so there's $1,000 you're saving right there. Those Recluses are not cheap, especially if you go for the entire package. You can get half Recluses where they make use of some of the clutch baskets, etc. But this was a full package. It's called the Recluse Core EXP, and it was not cheap. So I love my bike. I currently have this 350 that you're viewing here on screen, and I really do like it. But if I had to do it all over again, I'd probably stick with the 300 XCW. I might put I'd gear it differently on the sprockets for certain to get a bit more speed out of it, and I'd probably put a Recluse in that bike as well. It's certainly not as prone to stalling and flameouts as this 350 is, or was, without the Recluse. It hardly ever stalls now. But it's kind of nice to have that, you know, bring it to an idle, not having to, you know, go for the clutch when you're in nasty situations, and it saves your butt. and it has saved my butt on numerous occasions. And like I said, I'm not by no means am I a pro rider, but I do race, and I like to compete, and that Recluse is a lifesaver. So anyways, that pretty much wraps it up. That's my thoughts on the 300 versus the 350. They're both great bikes, and if they're set up properly, they can both be serious contenders. And but I would probably stick with the 300 if I had a choice. Hey guys, thanks for stopping by Motophonic, and make sure you hit that subscribe button and the like button if you like the vid. And remember guys, wear that protective gear. Don't ride like a squid. Motophonic out.